The responsibility is always on the people who are actually producing the product and putting it into the marketplace and making sure it's the safest and the right choice.
I heard a rumor about your retention rate being nearly 50%. That's kind of 2x industry standard.
That is where the quality of the product, no matter how good of your storytelling is, really at the end of the day matters. The experience of the product, the efficacy of the product.
You don't have to be niche. You can be something that everyone wants to be friends with, but ultimately have an awful lot of reach.
You can't replace the human interaction necessarily online, and you can't smell and touch and really feel the products. If you really think of the consumer who's looking for quality, they will find it and they will make the decision to click on the buy button, wherever that button is.
Thank you all again for tuning in to another episode of the Brilliant Commerce Podcast, where I get a chance to sit down with some of the brightest minds in commerce, working at iconic, or as I like to say, next to be iconic brands. And we get a chance to talk about what's working, what's not working, and just tell some honest stories. And so I'm thrilled to be joined today by Mila Mendez, VP of e-commerce and Amazon at True Botanicals. Mila, thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Where am I finding you today?
I am in East Bay of San Francisco.
Not typical California sunshine today, right? We're getting hit with some wind and rain.
Yeah, 50s, we complain.
Yes, exactly. Tis the season. It is winter after all. Those tuning in today that don't know who you are, maybe take a couple of minutes and tell me how you got to True Botanicals. I found your background super fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's been quite a journey, as you mentioned, but I started in beauty when e-commerce was just really this little new baby channel that kind of nobody really paid attention to, but knew it was coming, it was there, and had to be built. And I started at Estee Lauder Digital Division that at beginning, I was employee number 35, and
Wow.
7 years later, I was 475, and from a few $1 million to a $1 billion division. So
Yeah, juggernaut.
just skyrocketed, and Estee Lauder was one of the first corporations that really invested in and saw the opportunity. They had an acquisition of Gloss.com, which was a marketplace at that time. And through that acquisition, hired the initial employees in e-commerce. And then, of course, it became what it is today. After a couple of years there, almost a decade, I should say, I then continued my path in beauty across a variety of categories, but always looking for that kind of opportunity to grow something and build something. And that's just been the North Star for me with every role. I don't like to be settled in any sort of way. So that's what's brought me to True Botanicals. And True Botanicals is the last and latest in that journey of just building something in this evolving digital commerce world.
I love the term evolving. I think I've been in commerce since the late 90s. I had a short, 5+ year stop in beauty that I adored. And I remember when I was at Glossier, we used to look at Estee Lauder and some of the brands that Estee had, and very inspired by that. I know you also spent some time at Milk, and we really appreciated Milk's sort of approach to being cult. You don't have to be niche. You can be something that everyone wants to be friends with, but ultimately have an awful lot of reach. And so there's obviously like a number of brands there that you've been involved with that I have been inspired by over the years. And I remember before it was e-commerce, it was sort of like catalog commerce, and brands had to have a digital presence. That was the first time that customers were doing like a little bit of research, and then they would ultimately go in store, and then that evolved. And fast forward however long it's been, 25+ years, it feels like there's this assumption that commerce is a solved problem. And you just said, after 2 decades, it is evolving, and you're always learning. And so I am excited for us to kind of unpack like how you've seen the landscape change and where you see it go. But before we do that, True Botanicals, tell me a little bit about the sort of the origin story of this brand. I did a little bit of research, and like the more I learn, the more I like.
It's fascinating because I remember the brand launching 10 years ago, and being in the industry, I was just blown away by the high quality standard that were self-imposed, which um, is something that is very rare, right? Because beauty is such a commodity, or I should say, beauty products and making them, at least in the traditional way. So to see and hear a brand come to the market with just steadfast, different point of view and stand firmly in their kind of brand belief was really what the rest of us in the industry started paying attention to. And when I say self-imposed, is because, as we know, in the United States and our kind of regulatory uh, area, clean beauty is not yet fully defined, right? The way it is
Yeah,
in
it's like
maybe in some
natural
other
wine.
market
Yeah.
states. Exactly. So there's a lot of things that then confuse the consumer as a result of it. But being a brand that really, from day one, didn't waver from the fact that we will self-police the way we produce, regardless of what the regulations are, because this is the belief that we're in. We want to build something that is really standing on its own, from before it was cradle to cradle, and all this bodies of understanding how the clean beauty and sustainability really works. So of course the industry has made strides, and there is a clean beauty section in a lot of marketplaces online, etc. But it is still fairly unregulated, right? And so the True Botanicals brand really stands
Yeah.
for that kind of pioneering, truly clean, um, with the supply chain that really is transparent, and then gives back. And so I always try to be thinking about the brand that I work for and the people I surround myself with. Do we stand for something? Are we different? Do we give back the way we need to give back? And from my first day at Bumble and Bumble, which is a hair care company that was there for professionals, not for just themselves and consumers, every brand I worked for was pretty much standing for something different. And True Botanicals is one of them. And as I grow into the career and life itself, you also, as a consumer, try to pay attention to what you consume, and do you support something, and can you give back? And so I finally have the opportunity um, to work for a brand that really believes in everything that I do too, on a personal level. And so
Yeah.
there's no other joy than getting up in the morning and kind of combining those two. So it's really
That's
one of
amazing.
those, like, happy moments, right?
Must feel fortunate to work at a brand where you're so aligned with its values. You're not just trying to sell a customer a product or acquire them. You're sort of like, how do I tell the story about what we stand for? How do I get you to give the product a try? And then how do I get you to come back?
Correct. Yes. And the brain has, I think, really resonated on that sense, because there is such a great retention, and there is a proof that's been hard for the brand to kind of really stand on, and that is that there is efficacy in the product and potency of the product, just as much as any other kind of non-clean skincare. So it's kind of really important to continue putting that message out there that yes,
Yeah.
you can be clean and efficient for your skin. So there is no
Yeah. It's not a
reason.
trade-off. It's actually like
No, there is no
one is
trade-off.
actually supports the other. You said retention. You kind of read my mind. Um, I read a number that you don't necessarily need to tell me is true or not, but I heard a rumor about your retention rate being nearly 50%. And if that's even in the ballpark, that's kind of 2x industry standard. And I'd be so curious, again, without divulging numbers, um, if I'm nearly right. Like, what's the secret there? Is it you're just fantastic at retention marketing? Is it the product? Is it the brand story? Is it all of the above?
It's definitely all of the above. And it is not something to be taken lightly. Also, that the brand was digital first brand for 5 years, and so you could really only get it on in its own environment, so online or in its own store in San Francisco. So the distribution is still very limited for the brand, which is why there's of course opportunity for growth. Um, but if the products were not good and efficient and delivered on the promise of what we actually say on the packaging, people wouldn't come back. And
Yeah.
so that is where the quality of the product, no matter how good of your storytelling is, really at the end of the day matters. The experience of the product, the efficacy of the product, um, the value that the customer thinks that they're getting for their purchase, um, the firm belief and not wavering from those beliefs of how do you produce those products and the new products you come up with and introduce to the market. And so every step matters. And then the retention, of course, happens from that product perspective, right? And people's experience and use of the product. But then also, in my world, the technology then happens to help you with that if you want to make that stronger. So, um, building the right steps in your ecosystem, of course, then happens to help, right? But the products and the brand's efficiency in the product and what the product actually is, I think is really at its core, first and foremost. Because it doesn't matter how many offers I throw at you or how much I try to stalk you in my retention marketing. You will not come back if you don't think you got great value for
Yeah,
your.
it starts with the product. Yeah, and I don't think it's as simple as just offer after offer after offer. That's kind of like
Yeah.
fake retention. I don't think your numbers, you can't fake those numbers. Those
No.
numbers are fantastic. So is there one step in that formula that you couldn't live without when it comes to retention? Like from a technology point of view, like there's a number of people who are thinking about their tech stack that are listening to us today. What's the one thing that you would never go without?
Well, it's definitely the auto-replenishment model that was put in a while back, that made it very simple for consumers to stay loyal to the product and therefore not think about ever running out.
Yeah.
So that is something that if you have that kind of product where the replenishment is something possible, right? Like you wouldn't do that for a mattress company
No.
necessarily. It doesn't work the same way. Um, but um, but
You've
for
worn out the
something like
springs. It's time for a new
exactly
mattress.
skincare and stuff like that, it's just kind of makes everything easier. So yeah, I wouldn't take that out of our tech stack ever. It's then looking at how do you keep that having the right pulse and nurture that
Yeah.
then on a continuous scale, and also how do you scale it, right? And so it really is always a couple of things, but that is one major engine that I would say we would never walk away from.
Okay. And now you are scaling beyond just direct to consumer. So obviously there's Amazon, and I want to get to Amazon, but more than Amazon, you're taking steps towards being omni-channel. Is that a part of it as well? Sort of like being where the customers are now that you have this pull towards the product. Like we know that the product that we're getting is of high quality and that the efficacy is there. Yeah, just curious how that moved to omni-channel. How you think about that through the lens of digital.
Well, I always try to look everything as an ecosystem and kind of harmonious relationship. Um, and it reminds me always of something that the my first role in e-commerce was at the hair brand, and that started as a salon brand and started by a hairdresser.
That's
And
Bumble.
being, yes,
Yeah.
Bumble and Bumble. And being in e-commerce, you were kind of in this direct competition, right, with a
Yeah.
small on the shelf mom and pop store hair salon. And the one thing that I always said to everybody on my team, but also around me and my retail partners and et cetera, I said, the one thing I can't do is I can't give you a haircut.
Yeah.
You can buy online. I can teach you how to blow dry your hair and show you a video, but there's nothing that replaces that in real life experience of having great hair. Um, So same thing with every sort of physical product that also has a sensory experience, right? And so one thing you can't do is you can't replace the human interaction necessarily online, and you can't smell and touch and really feel the product. So every opportunity you have to actually give it, because we are in the business of producing something from humans and for skin on a human body. And so it's really a harmony of, are we in the right retail space? Do we have a right retail support to continue that message and that sensory experience? Then that same consumer has a full choice of purchasing then and there, or one time if she's experiencing in real life, she purchases because of a smell or a
Yeah.
conversation, and then continues online where she has some other discovery. And so it's really a full circle ecosystem, but it's a harmonious if it's done the right way. And
Yeah.
so I always try to look at digital commerce as part of that kind of ebb and flow of human experience is the best possible way. And so as commerce evolves, retail is also, brick and mortar retail is not the same as it was 100 years ago, and it's not going to continue being same. So both and every channel evolves just like human experiences are too. So I'm never forgetting that moment of kind of my first initial backlash of, oh my God, you're a threat, right? Digital commerce is a threat, but then you find a way of saying like, actually, they're not. They're just an extension.
Complementary. Yeah, I think it's short-sighted if we think about them as a threat. It is, your own channels are where you have an opportunity to tell the story you want to tell and take care of those customers that way. And it sounds like, I really like the term harmonious. It's not a like just pump it into the market, whoever's going to take it. It's not just a thoughtless wholesale strategy. It's, where do we want to show up? Where can these channels be aligned with our brand values, and they can strengthen the story? And yeah, and ideally there's, you have that healthy mix. I really like that term harmonious. So maybe not harmonious. I don't know how to segue into this. Amazon, I find really fascinating. And I know I talk to people who are excited to be on Amazon. Some people are excited and totally terrified to be on Amazon. And it's clearly an important part of your strategy. It is in your title. How do you think about finding that harmonious balance between these different channels, your owned and operated channels, and then your presence on Amazon? I mean, how do you tell the True Botanical story there? What does that look like?
So as we know, Amazon cannot be avoided. It is the marketplace on the planet. And ultimately, the consumer has a choice. And it's all about the consumer's choice of where she wants to shop, or he or she wants to shop. Um, and so if you want to spread the message of the fact that there is clean skincare available to you, it is better to be in a place where there's a lot of choice to choose from. And then you have the opportunity to actually be somewhere where it's maybe unexpected in that sense, but it's also where a customer shops. And
Yeah.
so why not be in a space where it gets a lot of eyeballs, gets a lot of traffic on its own, just by the sheer fact of being the biggest marketplace in the universe? And so that's kind of an opportunity for the brand. You may not necessarily have real estate within that space to tell your full story as a brand, but you have the opportunity to capture a brand demand that already exists. And so if the customer is looking for you, whether that's now in multiple places, and Amazon comes up as a choice of purchase, as a place of purchase, and she's also looking to purchase something else at a time that's very kind of convenient, household, etc., and they're a Prime member, why not? And so the way you can look at it is really, again, what kind of customer journey and a consumer experiences am I forcing? Is not really forcing, right? It's where she shops anyway. So really trying to find that balance in there. Um, and kind of not look at it as a competitor to anything else. Again, find the harmony, and that can look in a lot of ways. And so being in the right space also means you kind of you play brand defense, right? So you don't if there's some resellers, you're actually saying this is the official place to buy things. And if there is greenwashing or clean washing or et cetera, you say, actually, we're the brand that has all these certificates.
Yeah.
We're the place to invest in clean skincare. And so I really look at it as just an immense opportunity to capture if somebody's actually looking for clean skincare or types into botanicals on Amazon. And then I have them, right? I'm there, I'm available, and it's a convenient way of also capturing
Yeah.
the consumer. And then the last thing is, and I hear it's scary from one end, it can be scary, but you can play it in a way of it is another extension and it is another brand store, but it's also about assortment and curating that assortment just like you would curate at any retail versus other retail. You have the opportunity to curate the right story. And so you can kind of minimize direct competition if you have to, and offer different assortments across different channels. Just like you have exclusives for Nordstrom, you would have exclusive for Macy's, and you can have an exclusive for Amazon. So a lot of brands that play in the sandbox, they figure out how to play nicely in the sandbox based on what that channel can do for you and what kind of actual final assortment you can offer there.
Okay, I love that answer. It's maybe that's an answer that's going to scare people, in that it's real work. What you're describing as harmony doesn't happen organically. It happens with real work. And I think about like the era of performance marketing, which felt like we were pulling on levers a little bit. There was like this arbitrage. We know how much our customer is worth. We can spend up to that amount, and you're like moving things around. And I think sometimes the mistake that younger brands make, or perhaps people with less experience, is they think about channel management in kind of the same way. I'm just like pull a lever here and pull a lever there. What you're describing is like, no, I'm working this channel, and we are in there and we are working it every day, and we're thinking about the assortment, and we're thinking about, yeah, like making sure that we are the authority. And so there's no secret, there's no levers to pull. It sounds like it's just, you show up in the right channel, you learn how that channel works, you evolve as that channel's evolving, but you got to be there. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and I think you have to walk in with homework done. What you need this channel to be for you
Yeah.
as a brand. Um, in some cases, it's a reverse, right? This is the only and primary channel you're in as far as digital commerce is concerned, and some other channels are smaller or not a priority. So it starts, of course, always internally on what is the strategy, where is the biggest opportunity for you to really gain the consumer, and then see what that looks like on the replenishment level, et cetera, and what are the investments level that you have at your disposal to do so. So it really is working within your distribution ecosystem on what is your brand stand for, where do you need to tell certain stories, because let's be honest, certain brands in the beauty space don't have a story to
Don't have a
tell.
story to tell. Yeah.
So they don't necessarily need to be as discerning as True Botanicals, for
Yeah.
example.
Well, let's talk about storytelling for a sec, because again, in my research, obviously, True Botanicals known as one of the pioneers of the quote unquote clean beauty space. And if I understand correctly, like we're trying to move the conversation, and there's some risk I think that's attached with this, moving away from clean. I feel like we're in this place where the more people say it, the less it means. It's like it gets dragged down into this point of meaninglessness. I worry that well, the other thing we want to talk about, or I want to talk about, is agentic. And agentic is kind of the same thing. It's like agentic. Like, what does that actually mean anymore? As you think about moving the conversation beyond just clean and continuing to evolve the story of True Botanicals, how do you balance that risk between being where the customer is and what they're searching for, and almost like creating a new term or a new category, and not coming across as sort of a preachy? I imagine it's a super delicate balance, considering the brand's position. And I've been excited to ask you this question. So hopefully it's not too hard to answer.
It's definitely complicated because we don't have this regulatory standard, right? That we can kind of stand behind together with everybody else. And so the consumer experience has been muddled in this clean space as a result of it. So you need to figure out as a brand what do you have that no other brands have? And continue down that path and actually be more and more specific instead of using this kind of what it became a generic term, clean. So what does it mean for True Botanicals? It starts to really resonate when you look at audiences and who do you really need to speak to in their kind of life journey. And so as people become more and more informed, they will realize that the brand like ours that says, oh, there's a made safe certificate. Well, what does that really mean? That means 15,000 toxins do not exist in our products versus your regular product, your another brand. So we can stand behind those very specific words and that's kind of then becomes our edge because we
Yeah.
no longer need to just say clean and kind of stand in this muddled waters with everybody else. We actually have concrete proof and certain facts that we can lean on. And I think that's become something that we laser focus on and have the opportunity to then storytell through that. And so we end up resonating within the audiences who are also super focused and we kind
Yeah.
of match each other in this performance marketing space or whatever you want to call um, in a much more meaningful way. And because the consumer is searching certain specific terms and we're answering them because we're actually saying um, the exact things that she's searching for. So that's where the storytelling
Comes in.
matters
Yeah.
and differentiates itself from this massive term called
Yeah.
clean, but that's also undefined.
Yeah. I guess it's pretty easy to just say clean. It's something else
It's
entirely
easy.
to be able to back it up with science and claims and I guess like leaning into education without going so far. Like customers are searching, they're curious, what does it actually mean? Should I be putting all of this in or on my body? Maybe not. Oh, this is interesting. So that storytelling, I think, all versus like just putting another offer in front of someone. I think, again, I'll use your term harmony, finding that harmony, I would imagine, between real true brand building when you have an opportunity to talk to a customer versus would you like 15% off your next order? And we need a mix of both. We need a harmony of both, I would imagine.
Yes, it's always kind of image plus words and commerce and story, right? And so
Image flip. I
same
love that.
thing as always in real life.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Just do it well. Well, then maybe I'll wrap us up talking about agentic, and because again, using the idea that there is no governing body for clean, the LLMs are going to be the governing body when someone is searching, like, find me the best clean beauty brand instead of doing all the research. Now we've got agents that are going to do that research for us. And eventually, and today actually, depending on where you're selling, you could allow your customers to buy directly from these channels. And so there's a lot in there. This becomes a new channel, a new marketplace, if you will. I'd be super curious to learn from you how you're thinking about the harmony there and how you're thinking about your storytelling and content strategy such that you can have some amount of honest influence over how these LLMs are interpreting your role in the movement towards clean beauty. So a lot in there, but I've been excited to get your point of view here as someone who manages these channels in harmony very well.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting time because I think what worries me where LLM is getting information, right? And so, you know, Wikipedia, Reddit,
Reddit. Yeah.
and,
Everyone says
and
Reddit. It's like we're back in the SEO wars of like
exactly.
shadow
So,
pages. Yeah.
whatever Google allowed them to access and, whatever platforms allowed them to access. So I think that's the danger. And I think that's where the regulation and self-regulation within there needs to happen because as we know, they're also immensely incorrect. Right. And I was recently at the conference where, a person that runs a very, very successful product lab said that now the brands and new brand, founders are coming in and saying like, hey, here's a formula that I got on from LLM and can you do this? And then they try to do it in the lab and it's
Doesn't scale
horrifying.
up.
Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
it's
It's terrifying.
nonsense.
Yeah.
And so as it's in this and new era, right? We're kind of have to be careful, of course, and mindful of actually even more what as a brand we're putting out there. And where are these conversations being had with people who have access to now putting this information out there? And so I think, again, it's a responsibility on the brand side to really stand and be behind what they are producing. And so if we're saying 15,000 toxins, we better prove it now, and we better prove for it, because we'll get cited whether we like it or not, and then information is going to get pulled into a summary of somebody's shopping list in their ChatGPT agent, and we're not going to have any chance of that being corrected, right? Or some other brands is going to fulfill the market with, saying they have the same information and they have the same kind of formulations, but it's actually incorrect and they can't back it up. And so I think at the end of the day, the responsibility is always on the people who are actually producing the product and putting it into the marketplace and making sure it's the safest and the right choice. Now, so that's from the brand side, right? I'm looking at how does the ecosystem going to work? Where's the information and what's the information that needs to be filled in whatever engine is fueling the commerce, right? So that's something that never ends, and it's always been evolving, right? Like you were 10 years ago or 5 years ago, you could have a choice as a brand to invest in paid or SEO or both. And, there's always going to be choices like that. But the consumer, I think, has now the speed of commerce, right? And the choice of commerce that's changing. But also that consumer is not, we can't forget that consumer is not getting information just from LLM, right? She is still going to try to back it up within her community or talk to somebody or read something somewhere else and kind of be a little bit, and our consumer in the True Botanicals sense is really
Discerning.
mindful, right?
Yeah.
And discerning in that way. So she is not going to just, unless she's really sure, she's not going to necessarily click the buy button right away. She's going to keep searching. And the better information we put out there as a brand, the more informed she'll be in multiple places. And so this is where the brand and the real kind of puzzle pieces behind the closed doors in the brand matter as to who is doing what within each department of the brand matters on every level, because that's actually the information that's going out there into the universe, whether that's internet or word of mouth or, in store, that then gets pulled into the human experiences and making a choice of purchase. And so I think eventually LLMs, and they already are, going to become just the same ad space marketplace, et cetera. And we're going to have to shift our budgets, and that's already going to happen. But that's nothing new. That happens every 5 years, right? I just look at it as a change of where the budget's going to go
Yeah.
at the end of the day. And so I look at it that way. And I think, if you are producing a really good product and you have enough information to back it up, and you just have to work hard of getting the message out there. And then, of course, playing in the right place and having the right way to understand who your competition is and how you're going to actually use your budgets to rise above that competition if you can. But the wellness consumer and the people really mindful of their health and what they're putting in their body, et cetera, are also the ones really kind of careful of the information that it is out there. So I feel like as a True Botanical brand, it kind of has that good moment in time where she's going to keep searching. She's not going to just trust ChatGPT for this.
Yeah. But that's, I think that has to be what I've learned from this conversation is that has to be because you have a great product. You tell a really solid story consistently as you look for harmony across these channels. And I think what I really appreciated about this last part is that I talk to a lot of people and they're somewhat panicked about this channel. And you're like, you know what? It's the same thing we've been doing for the last 5, 10, 15 years. It's another channel. We have to show up there authentically. We have to tell our story. We have to know who our customer is. I think how I would distill down the lessons that I've learned from you thus far is that it's very difficult to find harmony if you're trying something different in every channel. If you're trying to win the game as opposed to just being a great brand with a really great product. And I think hearing you talk about how the brand has grown, how you're thinking about these channels as opportunities, but you keep coming back to the fact that it's about the product and it's about the message and giving the customer what they want, and not being afraid to take chances of like, yeah, we started clean, but maybe the conversation has moved beyond that, or maybe we need something that sort of governs it a little bit more. So
At the end of the day, the consumer is the one deciding in that moment what are they purchasing. And whether that's what used to be whatever channel, she's still making that choice based on the information available to her.
yeah,
And that's never going to change. And that
never going
really
to
doesn't
change.
change from any channel that's new, old, etc.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really the key to not forget.
Especially for a high consideration purchase. I'm not asking you to buy me a paper towel. This is something that is going to go into my skin, and I am going to make the choice. You know, I might use someone's help to present options to me, but I am going to make the choice. And I think when I say iconic, it's about how do you make it really easy for people to say yes? It's because, they trust the brand and they adore the product. And that's just hard work. I wish there was a magic formula. There isn't. There's no magic formula.
Quality, there isn't a
No.
magic formula. So I
Yeah.
think that's always key. And I try to always remind myself and my team and everybody around us that if you really think of the consumer who's looking for quality, they will find it and they will make the decision to click on a buy button, wherever that button is. But we'll take it, right? Because we're in the process of building a digital commerce business, and the revenue will always be there eventually. Nobody's going to, quote unquote, steal it from you because you showed up at the right place at the right time with the right information, which is why I never forget that you can't do it alone. and you need the people around you in the same mind space. And that means from the person packing in the warehouse to the tech guys sitting in any place on the planet trying to help you put that information out there in the right way. So
yeah, here. Like the customers will always make the final choice. Like the robots are not going to be shopping for us anytime soon. They might be helping, but we're still going to be the ones hitting that buy button.
In our heads, a couple of years before the chips come in.
I sincerely appreciate all of the knowledge and honesty and transparency and harmony that you've shared with us today. Really fantastic conversation, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Thank you. I enjoyed it while sharing the latest journeys and something that's very, very complex.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Bryan.